Olá, pessoal, boa tarde. Sejam todos bem-vindos a mais um seminário promovido pelo Programa de Pós-Graduação do Departamento de Informática da PUC-Rio. Hoje temos o enorme prazer de receber o professor Francisco Ortega. Francisco Ortega é professor assistente na Colorado State University e diretor do Natural User Interaction Lab desde outubro de 2018. Dr. Ortega obteve seu doutorado em Ciências da Computação na área de Interação Humano-Computador, Interfaces de Usuários 3D, pela Universidade da Flórida. Sua pesquisa resultou em mais de 90 publicações revisadas por pares, incluindo livros, revistas, conferências, workshops e artigos de revista. Por fim, o professor Ortega é comprometido com a diversidade e inclusão e sua missão é aumentar o número de minorias subrepresentadas no curso de Ciências da Computação. O professor ele vai falar sobre o uso da realidade virtual para tornar acessível os benefícios e práticas de imersão sensorial na natureza, para alívio do estresse e restauração mental. Now I will switch to English for the remainder of the talk. I would like to thank Professor Ortega for being here today to share his knowledge with us. Professor Ortega, please feel free to start with your talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Thank you for Professor Juliana, right?
Right.
And Professor Grace Silva for inviting me and having me here. Thank you so much. So, as I said, I'm a professor in Colorado State University, and I'm an assistant professor. Actually, in July, I'll become an associate professor, so it's official already. So July 1st. And I'm going to talk to you today about forest bathing VR, and I'm going to tell you a little bit what my lab does. I'm also really happy if any of you want to visit me here, want to talk to me in a conference, and also I kept this short so you can ask me as many questions as you want, whether it's about the research that I'm presenting to you today or related research that I do or anything like related to graduate school in the US. So I was actually born in Chile. I lived in Miami for a long time. I studied at Florida International University in Miami. And today, as I said, I'm a professor here, and I've received quite a few funding. So I do text my funders always. And you can see the picture above is my daughter with my wife and myself, and pictures with former students. And you'll see pictures of newer students as well. So I really like working with my lab students. We do a lot of events. So if you come here, you'll have quite a lot of fun and a lot of work at the same time. So I also work with quite a few collaborators, and I have a collaborator in Chile. I know some of the ACI people in Latin America, not everybody, but I know some of them, and so I have quite a few collaborators that I work with. This is my lab. Some of my PhDs are graduating. My master's all graduating now. I have undergrads going to another university. This is the next list to graduate within the next year, and then I have a few additional students. And I'm going to talk to you about this particular project and where it's going to go next. But I want to tell you a little bit of what my lab does so you have an idea. So we do a lot of work on multimodal interaction. This is my primary research with gesture and speech. And the stuff you see in blue underline is stuff that we're moving towards. The one in the middle here is the VR forest bathing I want to talk to you about. But we also been working on air notifications, cues. We have been looking a little bit of XR guarantees and security, but not too much. And we also look into some specific systems in XR. So one of the great things about research is that you never know what you're going to find. And this is the case for this research. I would not have been doing this research if it wasn't for a student and a collaborator because it wasn't something I was looking to do. So sometimes you stumble into problems and then become fascinated about the problem. And I want you to watch this video. And if you cannot hear the audio, tell me.
Over the past decade or so, my research has focused on spending time in nature and how that can affect us positively, from increasing mental health to improving stress recovery and cognitive functioning. Mostly, I saw this research as something that worked in theory. A few years ago, though, I lost my maternal grandmother to Alzheimer's disease. Her passing was very difficult for my family, and especially my mother. And so I found myself planning a really long hike for the two of us. As we were walking up and down the mountains, I could feel my attention span improving, and like this mental fog was slowly lifting from my brain. And that's when I started wondering if what we were doing at that very moment might also help treat the same Alzheimer's disease that impacted my family. It turns out I was not the only person who was wondering about this. When I came to CSU, I was able to connect with CSU Natural User Interaction Lab, who have been doing research on virtual forest bathing for years, along with their colleagues at the University of Minnesota, and also with Dr. Deanna Davalos' lab, who are experts in aging and who have done some preliminary work with older adults in nature. Together, we're collaborating to see if we could bring nature to elderly patients using virtual reality. Lots of previous research has shown that spending time in nature can improve cognitive functioning and reduce stress in younger adults, but very little research has tried to understand if this is the case with older adults. We're hopeful that this work could potentially lead to interventions that can slow cognitive aging and improve quality of life.
And that was my colleague Sara Templio, and I'm working with Vicky in Toronto, in Minnesota. And this is the student, the main student working on this research, and she's actually doing forest bathing in real life in Germany in that picture. And this is a really interesting concept, right? Because we started looking and say, how do we reduce anxiety? How do we reduce stress? And we started looking at environments. And real forest bathing has evidence to at least subjectively reduce stress. And there is some evidence objectively as well. And so we wanted to see, can nature be improved? And yeah, this is great if you can go to nature, but there's people for different reasons. A location, they may be sick, the age, they may not be able to go to the forest, right? So can we bring the forest to them? So in our first study, we said, well, does forests actually work? So we did the study here, and this is submitted to ACM Symposium on Applied Perception. I mean, it's accepted there. It's already published. And I can make all the slides available if you like. So we wanted to ask, what makes a virtual environment restorative? So we said, okay, let's look at two environments, the canyon, right? And when, there's no biomass there. I mean, you could find some, but in general, it's a nice environment. Some people may like it, or the forest. And we use subjective measurements to be able to determine whether stress was being reduced. So how did we do this? Well, first, we asked them to fill out the demographics, and then PANAS, SIPRS, and PRS, which are subjective measurements, to be able to subjectively understand how the person is feeling. And then we gave them a stressor, right? And here we want to stress people to be able to see if we can reduce the stress. And we used the Marcus and Peters arithmetic test. Then we gave them a post-stress. So we gave them the same PANAS, SIPR, and PRS. Then we exposed them to the environment for 10 minutes. And then we gave them again the survey. And what we were able to find is that, first of all, the Marcus and Peters arithmetic test, while this was known, it had never been done in VR. So we actually doing this in VR is also, we saw the increase of stress. So that means that it's working. The word presence to the biomass environment performed more restorative than no biomass environment, but we're not getting, like the results that we thought we were going to get. So
on the effects of VR forest.
Then we continue to the next phase, and we say, well, let's look at to see if the type of rendering on the forest makes a difference. And this is what the next study is.
On the effects of VR forest bathing, which is the fidelity of the plant life in the environment. There are two environments, a high realism environment and a low realism environment. These environments are currently being tested to observe the differences in restorative potential.
And so we did the second study, which actually has already been accepted. When I did the slide that was under submission, we got the final notice of full acceptance a couple of weeks ago. And this one is in the ACM transaction of applied perception. And when we did this one, we were saying, well, a low rendering of a forest makes a difference between a high rendering, like something high fidelity. And here we added some physiological measurements. Now, these physiological measurements, you have to take it with a grain of salt because we were using, like a basic heart rate monitor with a Fitbit, which are not as reliable. And the blood pressure, we took it with just like a regular machine. Nevertheless, we did get some interesting information. And of course, the paper will show you more graphs and more findings and so forth. So we did the same thing, but now we had additional measurements, right? The baseline, we stressed them, we did the post-stress analysis, we did the environment, and in this case, we had a control condition. This was one of the difference. The control condition was you asked them to close their eyes and for 10 minutes. So they're not looking at anything. There's some argument to that maybe they should have the headset with nothing in it. That would have been a better control. You can argue that. And in the second phase, we were able to successfully increase the stress again. So we're saying that this is working. The realistic environment actually provided significant evidence of positive scores and general restorativity compared to the control condition. Among the two were not. So we couldn't determine whether low and high, but we do know that the high compared to the control was different. So you can start thinking, okay, the more realistic you do it, the more important it is. And this is not true in everything you do in virtual reality. So sometimes you don't need the most realistic thing. In this case, it seems to be trending that way. So then this study, which has just been submitted, I think a week ago, to the ACM Applied Perception Symposium. We'll see if it gets accepted. We wanted to see, well, but is it really the forest, the 3D forest that makes a difference, or a painting of forest will help, or maybe abstract art, right? Like I like abstract art a lot. So would this work? And we do have a moving forest, but we had like a cabin. So imagine you're in a cabin and there's a part of the cabin that is open, and you're looking, in one of them, you're looking at the real nature. The other one, you just have like a 2D display with a picture. And we wanted to understand if the actual forest was the case. And we had this control condition, again, that you close your eyes for a given amount of time. So we did the same procedure, the same phase. We did have additional open responses in this case and some preference. We wanted to understand a bit more. One of the open questions, for example, is how do you determine beauty on the forest? How do you determine certain things? Aesthetics. It's not clearly understood. And here the result indicates that 3D moving forest environment was significantly more restrictive than the control condition. Again, among conditions, there was no difference, but between the control condition, the only one that was significant is the moving forest. So everything seems to be indicated this way. However, this is a really interesting problem. A really interesting problem that has many open questions. We're working on some of them, but I think there's opportunity for a lot of people to work on this. Some of the stuff that we want to find out is, does biodiversity in virtual reality matters? Meaning, if I have the same tree all over versus different type of trees, right? There are questions about, does the color actually matter, right? Does it have to be green? And other question that we're looking at, we'll show you next, is water. What about if you add water? Does this add anything to the forest? Can the water be alone by itself? And there's multiple questions on that. Same thing with the water. If we use water, do we still need to be green, or it could be any other color? So, but if you think about what other problems we have, other problems that other people can work on, this is, what about if you want to walk in the forest? What is the best way? Because if you do just move with the controllers, you're gonna get cyber sickness. If you do teleporting, it may be good, but do you get the same experience? And so there's what about if you are outside in the forest, you want to augment the forest? Does that help? Or if you're in the library reading a book, does adding plants next to you helps? There's also questions about multimodal senses. If we add smell, do we add wind, do we add temperature? Does that make a difference? And what is the most effective ways of doing it? So there's a lot of questions. I don't think we're going to be able to tackle all of them, but we're trying as much as possible. The other question that we're doing, and we just finished a study. We don't have the final results because we're analyzing the data, but stress is one metric, one thing that we're going to accomplish, but there is indication, and we're trying to look to see if the study can show this, that executive function in older adults can be improved by being in a forest environment. Can we do that with VR? So we are looking into those things now. And with that, I'll leave you. I wanted to make this really short because I spoke to Grace. I want to make sure you have plenty of time to ask questions about this work or anything in terms of extended reality, any type of work that we do here in the lab, about visiting and so forth. And we have, this is, for example, the kitchen game that we have. We have quite a few different projects. Immersive analytics we looked at as well, and so forth. So with this, my lab website is noilab.org. My email is the one up there, fortega@colostate.edu. And I want to thank you for inviting me. And should I stop the slides so you can ask me questions, or you want me to keep the slides up?
You can keep these slides up, I think.
Okay.
We have here a few questions. I would like to thank you again, Professor Ortega, for the excellent seminar. One of the questions is from Luis Fernando. What do you think about games for stress reduction?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if games may be able to reduce stress. I think it's a way to escape. You stop thinking about it. I think it's a possibility. I think it will have to be measured. I think it's a good research question to pursue. So yeah, it is a possibility. One of the problems, though, like if you want to do some physiological measurements or you want to do brain-computer interfaces, movement is going to be a problem for measuring. But you can do the qualitative, the subjective questionnaires for sure.
Thank you. Now another question from Michelle. Do you believe that a multiplayer experience could have a positive impact on the patients?
Can you repeat it?
How? You can see the question in the screen, I think,
All right,
but I can repeat as well.
Let's see. Where in the screen can I see it? Oh, in comments. Okay.
Do you believe what?
Yeah, I see it. do you believe that a multiplayer experience could have positive impact on the patients? Well, I'm a scientist, so I don't believe. I look for evidence, right? So I don't know. I guess it could be. I think it has to be studied. I think it's possible, but I'm not sure. Um, let me see. All right. So this is a question from Isabella Maurice.
Isabella Maurice, what other interesting VR projects has your lab pursued apart from the forest bathing one?
Yes. So thank you. And thank you again, Michelle and Luis Fernando, for the questions. Um, some of the primary, I'll go ahead and share some, let me share some slides. Let me see. One second. So you can show you other projects. Slides. Computer, upload. No, not upload. Present. Share screen. Share screen. Window. So we do a lot of projects with gesture and speech. Let me see if you can see in this one. Yeah. We do a lot of projects with gesture and speech. So we have the primary research of the lab has been looking at how people do gestures in AR and VR. How do they do gesture and speech? For example, one of the early studies that we did a few years ago noticed that when you have single object type of environment, the stroke happened before the speech, which is not common in human-to-human communication. It could vary, but we also noticed that when we do multiple objects, the selection, the gestures do change. We have also done studies where the size of the object matters. So we do a lot of stuff with gesture. We do micro gestures. We're looking at how artists, and we're also doing for sculpturing, how do they interact with multimodal interaction, with micro gestures. So this kind of projects. We do a lot of work on notifications. So you don't want to be full of notifications. So what type of notifications are useful? Let me see. I think there's a video here. This is the kitchen game, and we put here. You don't see notifications. Oh yeah, there's some. Where do you place the notifications, but also how do you interact with the notifications? We just completed one that is multimodal. We did this, it was a unimodal, interacting with notifications. We do AR work with cues. We're doing some educational projects too in VR. So that's kind of like the type of research that we have done as well. So if you think about the primary areas is multimodal interaction, micro gestures before. The other areas, notifications and cues in AR. And the other areas, VR for social good, which includes forest bathing. We're looking into social VR, and we begin to do XR accessibility. So how do people can interact in VR if they have accessibility problems, whether they cannot move their hands or can move only one finger? A speech is not necessarily the answer. So that's what I would say in terms of some of the additional work that we do. Let me see. Thank you, Yuri. Thank you, Paulo.
And we have also another question for Yuri. Do you think this technology can improve the experience in simulator related with survival games?
Which technique? The forest bathing?
I believe yes, but he didn't mention it.
Right. So if you mean the forest bathing, I think there's a lot of interesting on gaming here. And I'm more like a classic arcade gamer, but we have a kitchen game, but it's for notifications, but we don't really do games. But do you think the technology can improve experience simulator related to survival games? Um, I think VR is good for some stuff and bad for others. I'm not sure. I can't answer I don't know what the answer will be. I think it's another question that you could research. Um, and
Sure. I think that's all. I would like to thank you very much, Professor Ortega, for the excellent seminar. I really appreciate your talk, and I wish everyone a great weekend.
great. We'll have a great weekend and hopefully next year it can be there in person. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.